All right. Well, it seems like we are waiting for Michael to come back, but I'll be happy to make the introduction here. So it is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce everyone to Virginia Walden Ford. Fueled by her passion for educational opportunity, Ms. Ford has inspired families, filmmakers, and lawmakers to make positive educational changes that benefit all American children. Virginia Walden Ford is one of America's leading advocates for parent empowerment. As a student, a mother, an advocate, and a grandmother, Virginia has spent her lifetime fighting to create new educational opportunities for children and families. A native of Little Rock, Arkansas, and the daughter of two public school educators, Virginia and her twin sister, Harrietta, were among the first 130 students chosen to desegregate Little Rock's high schools in the mid-1960s. While she was raising her three children in Washington, D.C., Virginia was shocked that so many children were forced to attend failing, crumbling schools simply because they lived in the wrong zip code. In fact, she worried that her own son, William, was falling through the cracks of a system that wasn't focused on the best interests of students. In 1988, she took action. She formed a grassroots organization, DC Parents for School Choice. Along with a group of dedicated parents, Virginia went door to door, neighborhood to neighborhood, recruiting and training thousands of other parents to stand up for their children's futures. In 2003, with the support of national education organizations and lawmakers, Virginia and her courageous group of parent advocates succeeded in convincing Congress and President George W. Bush to enact the nation's first ever Opportunity Scholarship Program for low-income children, a program that set into motion a complete overhaul of Washington, D.C.'s education system. This program provides scholarships for low-income children to attend private schools, while boosting federal funding for traditional public schools and public charter schools, something that's near and dear to my heart as a board member of a charter school here in Jacksonville, Florida. Since the program's inception, thousands of students have received opportunity scholarships, and the program boasts a 91% high school graduation rate. Wow, amazing. After the program's passage, Virginia worked to encourage families to learn more about their school choice options, conducting information sessions across the city. Later, she played a key role in the congressional reauthorization of that same program. After winning several awards for her advocacy efforts, Virginia shared her advice and experiences in her book, Voices, Choices, and Second Chances. Her second book, School Choice, A Legacy to Keep, was published in 2019 and is available on Amazon. And you can see them right over Virginia's shoulder, her left shoulder there. Virginia is the subject of the fantastic 2019 film Miss Virginia, starring Uzo Aduba, Matthew Modine, Amira Van, Vanessa Williams, and Niles Fitch. Today, Virginia lives once again in Little Rock, Arkansas. She travels the country speaking to parents and education groups, just like now, encouraging moms and dads and grandparents to discover the value of their voices and the importance of their advocacy. Virginia is the proud mother of Michael Walden and mother-in-law to Nikki Walden, of Miasha Walden Gay and William Walden. She is the proud grandmother, help me with the name, Yamandau. Thank you, Virginia. Yamandau, Virginia, Chloe, Jeremiah, and Genesis. Once again, it's my honor, and I welcome Virginia to the stage.
Thank you so much. I am so curious. I am so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this for several weeks now. I love Michael, and so now I love the whole team. My journey has been incredible. Going from a mother of three who was struggling to make it every day to being able to have access to thousands of people and being able to share my wisdom or the things I've learned has been an amazing journey. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the beginnings and how we got started and what made us do this. I mean, in the late 1990s, I saw my children really struggling in traditional public schools. My two older kids were as every mother would say, academically gifted, in my opinion, and they did okay. They found their own ways. They learned how to do well in a system that wasn't always necessarily good to them. But like in any family, there's always an obstacle. And my third child, William, who, for those of you who have seen the movie, his name is James in the movie, but his name actually is William. I saw him getting more and more troubled and not wanting to go to school, and it scared me because I realized that the only person he really had in his corner was me, and I had to do something. But I was not a mother that was the president of the PTA or the one that stood out. I was kind of quiet and kind of shy, which people don't believe about me, but I was. I was not a speaker or a person that would stand up readily. But I looked at my child and I realized that if I didn't stand up for him, nobody else would. And I realized that I had to do something. So I started going to meetings at schools and going to board meetings and all those kind of things and got dismissed. Nobody cared. Nobody wanted to hear what I had to say. And so I began talking to other parents all over my neighborhood, and they were feeling the same way. They were feeling helpless and hopeless, and you know what do we do? We cannot sit here and watch our children get not get what they needed. And we didn't know. We didn't know where to even start. So I was lucky enough to attach myself to some people who really cared about education. And they said, if you're willing to speak out, if you're willing to go to Capitol Hill, are you willing to speak in board meetings, then maybe you can make a difference. And that started our journey. That began the journey. I began to speak anywhere anybody would let me. I remember getting up on stages and not really on the agenda and having talked somebody into let me talk about what was happening with my child, and which was also happening with other children all around the city. Traditional public schools were not meeting the needs of our children. What do we do? How do we remedy this? And nobody had a solution. In 1998, members of Congress decided that something needed to be done for DC. And I had been going around talking to people and trying to get my voice heard for a long time. And I was invited to come testify before the Education Workforce Committee, which was chaired by Dick Armey. And he let me say how I was feeling. And he let me give members of Congress, open my heart to them and say, what can we do for our children? Now, on the other side, I was getting beat up pretty bad because people were saying, sit down and shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just a mom, and not even a wealthy mom. You're kind of a low income mom. And then that was okay, because on Dick Army's side, they were saying, be strong, Virginia, stand up and fight, and I knew I had to fight. I remember leaving a hearing so angry that I was walking to the subway and I was thinking to myself, oh, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be in a place where people are going to talk about me badly or make me feel bad. Somebody almost made me cry. But the closer I got to the subway, the angrier I got. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to let them sit me down. I have to fight for my child. So by the time I got to the subway, I had a plan. I was going to talk to other parents. We were going to all get together and figure out what we could do to speak on behalf of our children. And that's what we did. We started DC Parents for School Choice, and we went around the city or to festivals, to barbershops, to hair salons, to nail salons, community centers, to churches. And we talk to them about using their voices, about raising their voices, and not just sitting back and allowing a system to continue to damage our children. And at that time, DC traditional public schools, they were fighting. There was violence in the schools. The kids were not reading or writing, or test scores was so low, it was ridiculous. I knew kids that graduated and could not read. I knew children that graduated who could not write or do math, and that was just not acceptable to us. So we started forming a group of parents that were willing to fight on behalf of their children. And it started with a group of about 50 parents. And we were scared. We didn't know what we were doing, but we knew somebody was going to listen to us. And so we went to Capitol Hill, which at that time was kind of the oversight for DC. And we knew that to get anything done in DC, we had to have an act of Congress. We learned that in the beginning. We informed ourselves. We made sure we knew who to go to. And we went to every office for the House and every office in the Senate, and we left our names. And at some point, they stopped saying that group of parents is not going to do anything. That group of parents is going to make fools of themselves. That group of parents is, you're uninformed, brainwashed, or whatever. And they started listening to us, and they started saying, I don't know, maybe these parents are pretty good. Maybe these parents will make a difference. Maybe some changes will occur with schools. And so we continued to go around and talk about it. And then at some point, we realized that there were 146 private schools in DC. And maybe if we had a scholarship program that would offer scholarships to our kids, maybe they could be the beneficiaries of a better education. And so that's what we decided to do. Us and some members of Congress gathered together and gathered our little group of 50 parents together, and we began to look forward to passing legislation that would provide um, low-income kids with a scholarship program to attend schools, private schools that wanted to be involved in this program. And it was very cool because so many schools said yes. We want more diversity in our schools. We want to learn more about kids that live in DC and what they can do or what we can offer them. It was an amazing response to what we were doing. And so for a year, we went to Capitol Hill every day from 10 to 2. And parents, you understand that we had to get the kids to school in the mornings and pick them up by 2:30. So we were there every day from 10 to 2. And we go to Capitol Hill and we talk to members of Congress, and we talk to anybody that would listen to reporters. And it's maybe about 50 of us. And I remember one time a reporter coming up to us and saying, and we had our little DC Parents for School Choice T-shirts. They were white with blue letters. And a reporter came up to me and said, who are you? And I said, we're DC Parents for School Choice. She said, I've seen a bunch of you around here. Well, Black and Hispanic parents are going to really stand out walking around Capitol Hill. It wasn't but 50 of us, but we did stand out. So the next day, this reporter did an article that said hundreds of Black and Hispanic parents were on Capitol Hill. It was about 50 of us, but I said, come on, we're going to go with that. And it made it even get more exciting because they thought it was so many of us. Eventually, that group of 50 parents grew into hundreds. Eventually, that group of parents grew into thousands. And we fought for that little program for a year. We eventually won, and President George W. Bush signed it into law on January 23rd, 2004. Once the program was signed into law, our work was still a lot. We still had work cut out for us. So we went into the communities. And this is where I think I can be helpful to the parents out there that are trying to fight for their kids, because we learned a lot as we were fighting for the legislation. But once it begun to be implemented, we realized that we had to go talk to parents. And so we began to build relationships with parents in the community. Um, we went where they were. We went to their neighborhoods. We went to stores and community centers. We did not ask them to come to us. We went to them. We communicated with them regularly about what this program was about and how it would benefit their children, because the opposition will get to them quickly as well. So we knew we had to make sure that they were getting the right information from us, and that their kids were actually applying for the scholarship program. We took portable Xerox machines and teams of people into the community to sign up parents in their um, apartments, in the lobbies of apartment buildings, in churches, in everywhere. I mean, we actually signed them up and made sure that their material got to the right people. And over a course of a few months, that first year, we had signed up over 1,000 families, and it was very exciting to us that this was actually coming into fruition. And so we continue to do that for several years. DC Opportunity Scholarship Program currently has about 1,200 kids that are in schools in DC. But over the course of almost 20 years, it's getting there, we have provided scholarships, or the program has provided scholarships for thousands of children. And as was said in the introduction, we have a 91% graduation rate. But even better than that, and that's the best you can get. But also, along with that, and how exciting that is, we have parents happy. Parents are for the first time seeing children that have been told that they couldn't excel or couldn't thrive in schools that weren't teaching them. Um, we're seeing parents happy, involved, excited, um, wanting to do whatever they can to help. I think the bonus to fighting for kids has been getting to know the parents, and having a relationship with parents, and they in turn having a relationship with their children in schools. I think that has been the most fun. And these are kids that nobody believed in, and now we're seeing them thrive. Um, we have a student that came out of the Opportunity Scholarship Program, graduated valedictorian in her class, and is a researcher at Johns Hopkins, and had her PhD. And I remember she told me just recently, if not for the scholarship program, she would have done okay. She probably would have gone to college. She was a really bright, tenacious kid, but she wouldn't have gone as far as she did go. We have another student that is translating for a city in Japan. She always wanted to do that, even as a little girl. She liked Asian kinds of dolls and activities. And so she's in Japan. And so we've seen our kids go from kids that nobody believed in to children that are thriving and making an impact on this world, including my own son. When William was a little boy or 10 or 11 years old and getting into trouble, I remember somebody in my family saying to me, I hope you live a long time, because if something happens to you, nobody's going to take William. He's too much of a challenge. And they laughed. I didn't, you know. And I remember thinking at that moment, Oh no, my child will do fine because I'm going to make sure I fight for him, and that's what we've done, and that's what I continue to do. You know, he is an adult now. He went to the military for 8 years, fought in Iraq, came home, just bought a house, has a great job with UPS, and I'm very proud of him. But I know if I had not been willing to fight for him, we don't know what direction he would have taken because we've seen other kids in the community where I raised my kids that did not do so well. So it just made me fight more, and I will continue to fight as long as I'm able to, and make sure that all of our children have what they need. Um, from the time William left school, every child that I've had access to has in DC has attended charter schools or private schools through scholarship program. You know, I refuse to allow my children to be in an environment or children I care about, which is most children in the world, but the children I'm around, to be in environments where they're not getting what they need. Um, I'm currently in Arkansas. I'm on the board of directors of a online school that I love, and we're seeing more and more children that are taking advantage of those kind of outlets. We have to make sure that we we have options available for parents because we know our kids and we know what they need. And so I think always in the beginning of my journey, I've always thought if only this child could go to this kind of school, but there was nothing available. So we have to, over the years, as more and more school choice legislation has passed around the country, then we see parents having an opportunity to say, oh, I know this child, he or she needs to be in this kind of school, and then be able to take advantage of that. And that's why we have to continue to make sure that there are options available to our children. And I've learned a lot about organizing for opportunities for children, and I hear from parents all over the country who are frustrated about the lack of options in their own communities, their own states. And so we as parents have to make sure we are informed about what's going on in our states and willing to make the sacrifice, if you will, to help make that better per state. We were in the 2022, in 2021 and 22 during the pandemic, we've seen the attitudes of parents really change. People want to be more involved. People want to use their voices. People want to stand up for their children. We are no longer willing to sit back and allow ourselves to be put in circumstances that are not in the best interest of our families. You know, I'm not sending another child to a school because it's across the street from my house, if that is not the best school for my child. And we have become clearer about what we need to do, and how we need to go about creating environments that work for our kids, homeschooling, virtual schools, online schools, all kinds of educational opportunities that will best meet the needs of our children. My three children all had different learning needs. I would have loved to have been able to send them to to different kinds of educational environments that better met their needs, but I wasn't, because at that time there were no options available. So we, which is why I stay in this fight. 20 years ago, and I've been doing this 20 years. 20 years ago, I said to a group of about 600 parents in DC, I will not leave you until things are better. And when the DC Opportunity Scholarship Program was passed, um, I felt very good about that, but I think we still have a long way to go. Now, I was talking to DC parents then, I talk to parents all over the country now, and I will fight until I can't fight anymore. I will fight until every child has a chance to get the kind of education they deserve. And so that's what I do now. I travel around and I make sure their parents' voices are being heard, or they have the information they need. I work with Ed Choice, and we have publications that are wonderful for parents. You just go to the Ed Choice website and you can find all kind of publications or information that will make your job a little bit easier. I fought hard so you wouldn't have to fight so hard. Those of us that have been around for 20 years, I guess we're the elders now of this fight. And it's sad that we're still having to be around, but we try to make sure that parents that are beginning to fight now, that are looking at what's happening with their children, and saying it's got to be better, uh, learn from us and learn from what we fought for. I was telling somebody the other day, we were warriors. We were soldiers. We built armies. Thousands of parents were involved around the nation, and and it was amazing effort. I think right around that time, it was the first time that parents knew that they had a right to speak out for their children. Up until that point, I believe that a lot of parents felt that they couldn't say anything, they couldn't do anything, and school choice and the activities surrounding getting legislation passed in different states, especially private school legislation, which was the first, has made it clearer to us that we have every right to be involved, because a lot of this legislation would never pass without parents, no matter what anybody said. We know that thousands of parents in DC fought for the DC Opportunity Scholarship Program, thousands. And we know that when it was reauthorized under a president that wanted to cancel it out, 10 years later, 5 years later, we refought, and we fought hard. So my wisdom and my words to you, as those of you out there that have young children in school. Now I have grandchildren now, but I I've asked my kids. So and all of them have made really good decisions about where their children are being educated. But for those of you out there, be strong, you know, use your voice, stand up, tell them they can't sit you down. These are your kids, and you will be successful. Thank you. I can't hear you, Chris. Ooh. I will answer questions.
All right, I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I
Okay.
can.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your amazing story. You may not have seen it as you were talking, but this chat is absolutely filled with people thanking you and sort of agreeing with everything that you're saying, and
Oh,
all
thank
the
you.
inspiration and feelings in there, and just one comment after another. I know that we're kind of half a minute away from ending here. I don't want to cut anyone's opportunity short to ask you any questions here. But I know that we have a couple other sessions. So maybe what I'll do, if you're okay with it, if you I can introduce the next session, but you're welcome to stay in here and maybe chat with people and answer some questions. Or if you need to get going, you can just let me know.
Oh no, I'm good.
Okay, fantastic. So with that, any questions for Virginia? Please, if you can, actually see if you can click into the participation page on the in the chat area, and maybe we can bring some folks on screen and maybe say hello.
Okay. So I should hit it.
Some of the folks here may be able to come in. Let's see if we can do this. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
We may lose them to another place. Well, we'll give them another minute or so, and otherwise we'll close it out. If anybody wants to chat with Virginia, request access to the participation in the upper right-hand side. Okay, actually, Gail's posted in the chat here, and it says, "Can you say a little about the private schools you partnered with?"
Most of the private schools that we partnered, I can, Gail. Um, well, there were 146 schools, and we talked to them about what their role would be. There were some guidelines. About half of the schools were Catholic schools. But the other half were small private schools that had been started in DC, who really wanted to have a relationship with the rest of the city. So they were all kinds of schools, but I would say 50% of them were Catholic schools. The Archdiocese of Washington was very supportive of the scholarship program, and they really took a lot of kids into their schools. But we also partner with some of the largest schools in DC. So does that help? Oh, you know, one of the things that I did, Gail, your question, I know they're not always the best fit for Black and brown kids. One of the things that we did was continued our organization. And then we went to the schools where we had students that were going, and we talked to the we were the kind of the intermediary. We kind of help parents. We talked with the schools, and we helped them navigate that whole private school situation. So it was a lot of assistance. And I know I would sometimes sit in on meetings with parents and administrators at schools, where our kids were going, and try to explain to them that everybody was saying the same thing, but people were saying it differently. So those early years, we didn't have many problems with our kids not fitting in. They did very well, but it's something that we had to be cognizant of. We had to keep in our minds that most of these schools were predominantly Caucasian. Our kids were, coming from some of the worst schools in DC, and they were behind, and they needed support, and we made that very clear. And if we had to intervene to offer support in the early years of the program, there were some schools that we did not advise parents to pick for their children. But most of the schools that stayed in the program through those early years, say the first 10 years, um, they figured it out. You know, most of them had never had much diversity in their schools. And so it was a win win for everybody, in my opinion.
We have another question here. It looks like from Michelle back in the Q&A. Can you give sources of potential funding for parents who are challenged in trying to get better support for schools in their community?
Um, yes, we have. I just want to say, yeah, Gail, we have been out there. Somebody, and I will answer that question. My mother-in-law, who was 90 something years old, when she saw the movie Miss Virginia, she called me and said, my parents fought for me to go to school. And I thought, it, she was black, and so we have been fighting for our kids for a long time. I was part of a group of kids that continued desegregation in Little Rock, and it was hard, but I think we got a really good education, and And then, but we always had our support of people, our families, our churches, our community, and that's what makes the difference. And okay, so Michael, I'm going to answer that. Can our funding came from foundations that were funding school choice efforts at that time, but there are several organizations, and maybe Chris, y'all can send them maybe a list of them. Ed Choice, um, AFC. I mean, there are several organizations that um, are working with parents. I know Ed Choice, and I'm on their board, and I know we're doing a lot with parents right now to make sure that parents in different states um, have some kind of resources available to them to fight in their communities. So, but there are several organizations that are national organizations like American Federation of Children and Ed Choice and others. But I also would check with your local elected officials and see what kind of discretionary funds are available to support communities. Because that we got funding from Washington D.C. to local elected officials, and but those are the kind of or there are a lot of organizations that would be there, and I'm sure that are going to be funding. But for now, I think that if depending on how big a city you're in, large cities usually have some kind of organization that will help fund parent efforts. And so maybe after we finish with this, I can get with Michael or Chris or Lacey, and I can give them the list of the organizations we work with. But when we were fighting, my mother funded my organization. you know, she when we first started off, my mother, my cousin, and two of my sisters wrote a check every month so I could pay for the printing copy machine. So it's not easy. I mean, over time, there were others that came in and helped us out. But this is not a well funded work. I mean, we had to fight hard and with very few resources, and it was okay because we were fighting for the children. But I will share that with you, Chris.
Okay,
Okay.
that'd be great. Um, Virginia, I want to say thank you so much, and the other folks in here, I'm sure, are so appreciative of your time. At this point, I will say to everyone in the room, we trust you enjoyed this session with Virginia, and there's so much more to come. Just know the recordings are going to be available for you to come back to over and over again. And if you would fill out the poll on the right-hand side, that would be wonderful. And thank you very much for attending. And once again, Virginia, such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and tell Michael hi. I didn't get to see him, so
I
tell
will.
him.
He was having some tech problems. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I've been there, done that. And thank you all for attending the session. I appreciate it. This has been great. I can do it again. Bye
Perfect.
bye.
Thank you so much. Take care, Virginia.
You
Bye-bye.
too.